Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital. Welcome back, London Horror Movie Club. This month, Chris and I get to explore a whole new angle of filmmaking with you, as our guest is an artist and animator. Working across some eye-popping styles, like crazy cool stuff. He has done concept art, storyboarding, he makes animations, he makes films. You might have seen his work in the poster for Video Shop Tales of Terror, the opening credits of Wyvern Hill, some scenes from The Witches of the Sands, short films like While Daylight Rests and Robot Armadillo, and most recently in the music video of What It's Like to Lose for Falling Into View. Welcome, Mark Stewart.
Hello.
Yay! We have a huge range of things I can't wait to ask you, but I'm going to start with a really broad question, but one that I bet a lot of our viewers want to know. How did you get into being an animator? How did this happen?
Well, I've always created from a very young age, and I went to college. I did fine art, painting, did a degree in fine art painting, but I started to dabble with independent, with little movies a few years ago. I worked for Heineken for quite a few years as a TPM coordinator, and my role was to engage people, to promote, to sell, to coach. So that was my opportunity to start introducing animation and film into Heineken. And from that, I learned lots of skills, got used to being behind the camera, got used to using lots of different softwares, and then decided to go independent 4 years ago. And the rest is history.
Congratulations. Wow, 4 years. That's amazing.
4 years and I haven't stopped. I thought, I know, I have no life. It's just work. 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. But it's that buzz that keeps you going, into all hours of night. Put on a Prime or Netflix are always on in the background with horror movies, always. And meanwhile, I'm working away, just doing some stuff. Probably missing the best bits of the movies because I'm staring at a screen or a monitor. But yeah, it's animation. I've always been passionate about animation. I grew up watching Tom and Jerry, Warner Brothers. I mean, absolutely phenomenal timing in the Tom and Jerry cartoons. Disney was a big fan. I mean, Pinocchio, it was so beautifully done. The underwater scenes, I think, are second to none. So I was always inspired by animation and intrigued about how it was done. And when I was little, there weren't so many documentaries or magazines about how these things were done. It was almost like magic that these things come out, but nobody really knew how they were created. And I think in the last 20, 30 years, people have now got the chance to see how that is done. And I think that has helped a lot of people get on the bandwagon and work independently because they don't need to be part of a huge studio franchise. You can create at home on a little PC. You can now have the facility to draw and scan, paper animation or photograph it and put it into a timeline. So animation has really opened up, I think, for the independents in the last 20, 30 years.
There's so many different types of animation that you can see. I mean, obviously you mentioned some just with like Tom and Jerry to Pinocchio to what I saw at Horror on Sea with Witches of the Sands animation and that type of, I want to say Monty Python also had something similar to that, but is there a type of animation or a style of animation that you prefer to do over the others?
No, there isn't. I love playing around with different styles and concepts. Movement is really important to me. I think that's obviously animation is moving frames, but when you create a movement, you're telling a story, even if a scene's quite static. Like the animation work at the moment with Tony for Witches of the Sands, it's like a theatre piece, a small theatre piece. So they're individually drawn and then they're put into a 3D software, and you can move the camera between them. And in some of the shots, when there's narration taking place, the camera is just slightly moving. And I just find it intriguing, that little bit of movement has a narrative without you maybe realizing how it's talking to you, you know. But yeah, Monty Python, I love collage work, hand drawn work, Wallace and Gromit stop motion animation, Ray Harryhausen. I mean, you know, the old special effects, that type of animation. Love it all. Just love it, and love the. I think what amazes me the most is it's that. Have you ever heard the story where the two men are digging a hole and a king or something comes along and asks them what are they doing, and the first one says I'm digging a hole, and the second one says we're building a cathedral. So they were digging the foundations of a cathedral, and I think that's fascinating. You have these amazing buildings and amazing art, but somebody had to concept it first, had to come up with the idea. And I think that is the brilliance of art and animation. I think that is really where it all starts, that spark. And then the rest is more a process. It can be a slow, sweaty process because you're using technical skills while doing the majority of it. But you have to keep that creative flow in your head at the same time to keep that narration, keep the story, don't lose pace. And so, yes, I like all styles of animation.
It's really interesting what you're saying about having to keep that flow of narrative. Does that mean that you would prefer to work then on one? Because you mentioned you work on loads of projects and you do corporate stuff as well as film and music videos. Do you need to be able to be focused on one of them at a time in order to make sure you keep that flow, that narrative, that style, or can you work in between them?
That's a really good question. I can work on a few at the same time, but when I was creating the music video, that was really intense. As I told Tony, I just shut down for a month. And when I was working on Robot Armadillo, that was 6 consecutive weeks. I didn't do anything because it was such a demanding visual, wasn't it? It was because what you wrote was beautiful, but it was I used to lie in bed and listen to it over and over and over again and digest it and think, I know what Lauren is saying, but how am I going to visualize it so that the narrative flows with what you're saying? Because you're coming in and out of comparisons. So there's no plateau when you're in the timeline of your narration for Robot Armadillo. Really conceptualized, then matter of fact, really concept. So it's how do you do that in an animation? How does the visual support the flow of what you're actually saying? So for something like that, it was complete switch off. But generally, I'm working on a few things at the same time. Yes.
So then, does that mean that when you were working on Witches of the Sands, for instance, and you had to animate Tony's Willie, for instance, was that something that was in your head while you were working on multiple projects? Could it possibly have crept into other projects as well?
Yeah, it is. It is. And what's really good, Chris, is the advantage is you will create something in an animation, and then you go, oh, I can totally use that effect or that in this one. So and so many things happen by chance. So many, even to specific time. And when we created the first animation for Tony sent me the song, which is the sand, about 10 months or a year into the project. And when I put it against the timeline, it was to the second perfect at the start. Oh, wow. And we couldn't believe it. And I sent it to Tony, and we just couldn't believe it. It was almost like our minds were working the same with how we wanted to evolve this story. And sometimes that will happen, you know, just by chance. And some people say, I love the way you've done that. And you're going, yes. It was a fluke. Because it will, some magic will happen every now and then. And I think that's what makes it interesting. You know, it's not 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious now, have you had other visuals, ideally not my partner's Willie, that like worked for one project, but then you either incorporated a similar visual or it gave you something that you then used for a totally unrelated project? Does that kind of thing happen?
Yeah, that has happened because when I'm working with Tony, and because they're so random, Tony sometimes has an idea in his head, like for Mr. N, he liked Mr. Ben style, 1970s British animation. he liked the Monty Python for the very first animation that we did with him swimming under the sea. But when you do a sketch, I will always put the sketch to the side, thinking, I like something about that, but we're not going to use it on this one. And then you will 9 times out of 10 go back to that and find a place for it. So nothing gets wasted. I have so much paper I keep, I have to get rid of it. But when I always sign and date ideas, and it's just a nice little diary of where I was at the time as well. But definitely, Lauren, you will create something that, no, it's not appropriate here, but I'll just put that to the side and we'll use it somewhere else. And that happens a lot. Definitely.
So I have an interesting question along the lines of, you said that you'll have like horror movies or whatever playing on Netflix and Prime, and my wife and I were driving last night. She was asking me who we were talking to today, and I was explaining that you were an animator, and then she had mentioned, could you do a whole, like, a feature length animation horror film?
Yeah.
And I know that there are, you can do the stop motion or puppetry, and there's been people that I've done those. Do you think you could? I mean, you can do a whole feature length animation horror film?
Yeah, I could. I mean, basically, I'm a one-man show. So for the music video and for some of the work with Tony as well, I'll do the filmography, the directing, the animating, edit the timeline, the effects. I do all that, and even edit some music if I want. But when a band like Fallen in View give you music, it's proper recording, it's crystal clear. You don't have to worry about the audio or the balance against the animation. But yes, I could, Chris, and that is my goal. I have so many ideas. I stayed with Tony and Lauren. They were the best hosts ever.
Oh,
and just before Christmas for the almost wrap-up party, which is a sad. And we were just talking about a lot of ideas, and I threw a few ideas out. And I have stories from 25 years. I have one story that I actually had a domain for to protect the name, and it's 3,000 words of verse, and it's epic, and it has a real moral to it, and it's bright when it's happy, it's blue and cold when it's, and that's something I'd like to work on. So what I think I do in the future is I will work on a few independent shorts for myself, just to get on them. I'd like to work more with actors, and I have no idea how people direct people. I think it's the greatest skill. I really do. I see some of the independent movies like Jonathan Zern's Derelict, and the way these people act and the way they're directed, I'm gobsmacked, because I know it's not that natural in front of a camera. I don't know how people do it. And just even when the camera's panning, just having the right place to get the right expression. So I'm not saying I couldn't do it, but I'm saying I have the deepest admiration for those that do it, because I think it's one of those skills that people do not understand. It takes a lot of ability and tenacity. It really does. And so that's something I'd like to do as well, Chris. I'd like to work with animation effects and people. I mean, I have directed a few people. I mean, I made a little 1950s safety video for Heineken 2 years ago. It's done like a sci-fi, and I have a news bro. Michael J. Coombs is reading an American accent. Sorry, Lauren, but it's still. And he's and I had the sphere, the globe moving, and I had effects. I had a fictitious animation for a product that would make you safe, and they really liked. And I did direct him. I mean, I did tell him how I wanted to behave, but that was where he is a news reader and he's just staring at a camera. He's not interacting with the environment. And that is something I'd like to do more of, to be honest, because I like people. I like interaction. I like capturing emotion. So why not do it with people? Some people have amazing faces that are just crying out to be on camera. You're walking through town and you go, "Oh my God, you'd be brilliant." I wouldn't say it to them, but it was weird. So much. But yeah, I always give a long answer, Chris. But yes, I do have the ability, and I have the technology as well. When I went independent 4 years ago, I had a computer built for myself. And when I went to pick it up, the tech guy was classic, a classic tech nerd, big ginger beer, glasses. And I walked in and he said, "We have built you a monster." And he said, "I wish I had one of these because I wanted something that could render animation." So the work I'm doing for Tony, I don't know if you know much about the science of it, but you can use Cycles or Eevee to render. Cycles is super demanding on a computer. My computer can do it. It can render super realistic, 3D environments, with my artwork and that. And that is, yeah, I do have the ability to do it. And I want
incredible.
to do it. Yeah.
That is amazing. So you were talking about like being able to render spaces, and you've been talking about like moving with the camera and stuff. Does that mean that you are effectively like directing a 3-dimensional scene, even though you're making something 2-dimensional?
Yes, when you animate, you're always directing to a level because you are controlling movement pace. And I think movement pace is the secret to directing an animation, because it's not just about having a character moving. It's about how fast they move, where they move in shot, what angle you display when they're moving. And that's like directing. So for Tony's, we're co-directing this one. We've got, I've built, I don't know if you've seen it, Lauren, but a theatre and theatre figures. So I've drawn Bela Lugosi, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee,
Boris Karloff looks great.
And they are actually then put in the computer and stenciled around. And they're like, they've even got mottled cardboard at the back if the camera goes wrong. So they are real environments. I made a Ladybird book, for the story.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually changed the logo on it. So the book opens, you can see the creases on the pages. So what you do then is once you build this environment, you can make the lens of the aperture of the camera as big or as small as you want, and you move it through this environment. And you tell the characters where to move at the same time, and you change the lighting to direct your focal point, and you change the focus point as you move along from one character to another, because they're only that size in the system. So you are directing everything. You are movement, lighting, camera, pace. And you do that to keep that flow, because at the end of the day, they're just a bunch of stencils. But once you move it and the narration, and you zoom in on somebody's held expression and you move on, you're telling a story. You're telling someone what you want them to look at and how you want them to react to it. And that's what I love about it. It's just secret code.
Yeah. How do you come up with that? How do you come up with that movement? Are you thinking about that in your head? Do you have like 2 or 3 different things you want to try, or do you know exactly what you're aiming for, and you're just going to keep going until you get that right angle and the lighting?
I always seem to know what I'm going for, and that's why I can produce work pretty quick. I always seem to know what works. When Tony and I were working on the Toxic Crusaders, Toxic versus Witches, I don't know if you've seen that, Chris, but it was like a homage to Toxic Avengers style. So it's a 1980s style animation with the Witches characters in a cinema and all Toxic Avenger characters apart from the Avenger himself, because the movie was being released and the rights, etc. So when you're doing that, Tony did sit down. I was on holiday, so I was in the pub with my Wi-Fi on, having a drink with Tony. And that was where we both really went through. There was something not working with it. It just seemed, it seemed to die. It kept moving. So sometimes you knock heads and we didn't change what I put in. We just added extras. So it's a bit like the head and jaws in the boat. There was a few bits that needed oomph. Okay. And that's where, so the angles in the original camera movements were fine. There was just gaps where you needed to put something in just to keep it flowing and keep it funny, because what Tony likes, what I like about The Witches is it's quite graphic and it's quite shocking, but it's so personal at the same time. It's a bit like his biography, and so he wants to say something a certain way, regardless of what you're looking at on the screen. So I have to respect that, and so that's why we knock heads a lot. Our messenger never stops, does it, Lauren?
No, and it's great though, because I think you guys build on each other. Was it like that for the music video as well? Was there a lot of feedback? Do you find that?
Well, the lady that sings in it, Elisa, she has done degree in directing and done so. We sat down and they told us kind of what they wanted, and then they pretty much left me.
Oh, nice.
Just left. And they had the idea came of a collage, so for that video, have you seen it, Lauren?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Can I just say as well, one of the coolest things, I got to see you doing the "We Want You" poster, and that made me so happy.
And those pictures, they're me younger as well, further on when I was in college, because I like the 90s look of them.
Yeah.
You can see a pink house in one scene, and I photoshopped at least in it. That was my student house. I lived in a Victorian pink. It was known as the Pink House. And there was an underground, I know I'm sidetracked, you could go underground with the servants' quarters, and it was closed up. You could have originally walked straight under the town itself. If you went out the other way, it took you under the graveyard, which is at the back of our house.
No way.
And how many times I thought, I'd love to go there. I wish I could go there, But I had a view of a graveyard from my room, which is brilliant.
That's cool.
Well, yes, so in that animation, they just left me to it. So what we came up with, I said, do you know what? Because you're telling a story about what you've been through in a relationship, you'd have pictures on your walls. You'd have good pictures, happy pictures, sad pictures. Let's make a collage, and the camera just tells the story of that wall. So I actually built a room, built the skirting boards, built the blinds, built the tacks, the blue tack, because I don't like taking anything from anywhere. Built the photographs, scratched the photographs, built the frames, made the poster, the movie poster, and then put it in and created it as a movie poster. So every single thing in that movie is original. Everything. Wow. So nobody can ever say, "Oh, you took that from there," because I don't like that. So then all I had to do was direct the camera through the environment, in and out of the picture, moving around. And just like what Chris was talking about earlier, it is, you kind of have to know what you're doing. You just, when do I go up to this picture? But what's very different about working with a very fast-paced music video is you are working at 24 frames a second. Every frame counts. So when it moves from one shot to another really quickly, you're calculating that. There's a lot of maths involved. So you're checking against the original timeline. You're putting it into your Premiere Pro timeline after you've rendered it. You're saying that was 125 frames, so I need to take 125 off here, and then you put it in so it's right to the. So there's a lot of maths involved in it to get it right.
Hopefully that hasn't turned off a lot of people. Yeah.
I'm out. If it's math, I can't draw and I can't do math. So I'm out. I'm stuck out.
It's surprising how much it's used in animation. It really is. With a lot of Tony's videos, there's like the Witches of the Sound song is quite slow and ethereal. So that gives you space to go in and out of the same scene. When a song like What Is It Like to Lose is so fast, you go from one line in the verse to another, so you have to direct them, so yes.
That's incredible. Do you mind if I ask a little bit about your painting and your art? Because I know you did the movie poster for Video Shop Tales of Terror 1, the first one, and I think that was all hand done, wasn't that? Or did you do that?
Yeah, that's all in canvas. Yes.
Yeah. So what's doing something like that like? Is it similar? They sort of leave you to it, or does it very specific? What's the process?
Some people are so vague. Some people are very specific. Alex was really specific for Video Shop Tales. And I actually complimented him and said, "You're one of the most methodical." He was like you, Lauren.
Oh, no.
He was one of the most methodical people. And I found it so refreshing. He sent me PowerPoints with pictures of the characters and what he'd like to see in the poster. And then he left me to do the design and get the conversation. And I think I posted it originally. I did a thumbnail that size. because when you sketch with pencil that size, the whole balance of composition comes together. And I think one of the storyboard artists for Star Wars used to do that in the 70s as well. I don't think it was Ralph McCoy, but someone used to design, and he did little thumbnails, and then of course they're balloons, because it just helps you get the balance of if the head's here and the proportions here, and then you just start enlarging it. And that was a big canvas. I think it's over a meter,
Oh,
800 or something.
wow.
Yeah, that's a really large canvas. So I had to wrap it up in bubble wrap and send it off to Alex and leave the space. You always people are quite specific because you have to leave a space for your movie credits, titles, your etc. So you can darken here or brighten it because we're going to have a dark fonts, etc. So you have to remember what it's for. It's not a finished piece in itself. It's part of a finished piece. So you have to make sure there's enough space, top or bottom, and that can destroy the composition. But painting, yeah, I mean, you know what I can do. I've been able to paint photoreal since I was 13, and I haven't lost passion for painting, but I'm sad what's happened painting. It's I mean, obviously AI has come along and people can reproduce, but I think paint is still misunderstood by a lot of people. It's very much oh, that's nice, that culture. When real art, real painting should tell a story. So what I've said now going forward, I mean, I can still do movie posters, but if people want a commission or for a family, whatever, I've said I refuse from now on to do pictures of people in their Sunday best. They'll send you, and they're looking there at a camera, and there's no emotion, and you're just thinking, well, the photographs suffice. So what I've said, somebody's come to me looking for something a week ago, and I think it's a family. I'm going to go there and photograph them in a natural environment, maybe even reading a book, maybe a cat on the lap, so that it's telling a story about them. Because paintings were. I mean, are you familiar with Theodore Jericho said they're after Medusa? Yeah. Phenomenal. Right. And the story is even more phenomenal. The guy was painting in a studio with corpses from months, He'd pay kids to go and take limbs and wheel around. So he was seriously passionate. But what that stood off at the time, it was a historical piece. It was like a news broadcast to demonstrate the trauma of what happened, those people that were stranded off the Medusa. Art's kind of lost that now because you can snap something on your phone. So that representational, historical part of art painting has gone. But you can still, it doesn't mean you can't do it. But so now I think painting has to go back to what it was originally for, where it's not, oh, look what I can do, but tell me a story. Yeah. Mystery, there always should be a bit of mystery. You should always walk away from a painting going, what were they saying? I think they were saying this. No, I think they were saying that. If you can do that between a group of people, the artist succeeded because they're saying something to each one of you and they're poking the right buttons, without actually making it clear and literal what it is. It's a couple and a wedding, There's no story for that. So, but I love painting. I use all different types of medium. I love oils and canvas and linen. Amazing. I do a lot of glazing, so it's the indirect process. So the direct process is where you can paint somebody and you paint the shadow and the highlight at the same time. The indirect process is where you paint something and you walk away and you let it dry, and then you mix maybe a semi-opaque Prussian blue raw umber. It gives you like a natural black, because there's no such thing as natural black. And then you put that wash in, and as time goes on, the more you build it up, those areas get colder and darker and push away. But it takes a few weeks to do that. And the same with highlights. So you're literally building on a platform. It remains flat, but if it was a Photoshop, it would be lots and lots of layers. So many layers. And that's the way I like to work.
I've never thought so much went into a painting. So this is great. Like I don't have that part of my brain is like dead. I don't like when I go to a museum or something, I can look at art and I can see the skill, but I don't like it's amazing like that you the way you explain it makes sense, like just the I guess the talent that goes into creating the spaces within the picture. That's pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and it's. I think that's why I feel a little bit sad about art, because it's not. It's there are so many amazing artists on Instagram. I have to be honest. There's so much talent out there, but sometimes people will video themselves drawing something really quick, which is fine, and it's commendable. But when it's all the time, art, that's not really what art's about. You have a skill, so use it. Your art is about, same as movies and stories and books, communication, creating a certain emotion, taking you outside the realm of normality, contemplate, reflect, an ambience. That is what art really should be doing. And I think a lot of those artists in the old days, they were trying. If you think about it, there were no cinemas, there was no TV. So when you went to the gallery, you were actually seeing locations for the first time ever. Some people might have never seen the sea, and never seen Paris, and never seen the way people dressed in other parts of the world. Art was so important, and that, of course, people got influenced by art. So a lot of people know in France, plein air, it's got a whiter air, it's clear air for painting, not as yellow as it is in the UK, but the location wasn't just beautiful, but the lighting was different. The actual environmental lighting is different, but also they were learning of each other. And that is the advantage of art. It was changing culture, changing fashion, changing design. And you pick these things up without realizing them, How many times have you watched a movie and you go, oh, that's a bit like such and such. You don't know exactly what it is, but it's in the back of your head. It's the same with art. You see a lot of scenes in movies that are completely influenced by a painting. That happens a lot. These guys did this 400 years ago. But one thing I will say, just going off a little bit about galleries and painting, I've seen quite a few Rembrandts. Rembrandt is a genius. I was in the National Gallery of Scotland in Edinburgh 20 odd years ago as a student. And I went up to this little painting. I can't remember the name of it. And as I focused, you could see a little lady down an alleyway. And as you focus more, you could see bricks, end wall, plaque on the wall, writing on the plaque. It used that many layers of glazes, just like in a real night environment. It took your eyes to adjust. And if you took the time to look at the painting, you suddenly seen more of the painting. I mean, that's genius. Nowadays, in a movie, you would increase the lighting or move the camera forward. He was pretty much saying, you walk past it, you miss it. You give me time to come into my little space, and I've got something else to tell you, right down to something written in the back on the wall, That's art. That's what it's all about.
That is incredible. We've talked a lot about obviously two-dimensional art and painting with that. Do you have movies that do that for you, where you want to spend more and more time? I know technically a movie has a time limit, but you end up rewatching it because you want to spend more time with it. Do you have movies like that?
Yes, sometimes. Yes. Yeah.
Which ones?
Sometimes. Yeah. Movies that I've made or movies that somebody else has made?
I mean, either. I was thinking of other people in the same way you'd sit with a Rembrandt, but if you have one that you love, that's yours.
I mean, Jaws. I've watched Jaws so many times, and now I haven't watched it in about 7 years because I went to Birmingham Symphony Hall and watched the Czech orchestra play the music live to the movie, and it was such a moving experience. I haven't done insulted by watching it on TV anymore.
Oh,
no. Because every time people were laughing more, so the character audios was separate. Every piece of music was played live. So the head in the boat scene, which I mentioned earlier, everybody jumped and laughed. The atmosphere was amazing, And when when the music really takes off, John Williams, when the almost adventure, when they've got the barrels, everybody was like buzzing, and it reminded me of what cinema's supposed to be about, that you you're completely removed from the space outside. So yes, I've watched that many times. Funny enough, one I watch a lot, I just like it is Ready or Not.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know. I just like it. I think the lady is amazing. I really, really like it. And I love this. I suggested something like the song for Tony, run, run, run. The hide and seek song, at the start of the animation we're doing now. It's just one of those things. But any other ones that I like to watch a lot? To be honest, after this podcast, there'll be a list as long as my own.
Yeah, it always happens.
But on the spot. But one movie I do like, and there's quite a lot of mixed reviews about it, but I really like it, is The Taking of Deborah Logan.
Oh, interesting one. You're right. Controversial.
It is controversial. I really like it. And there's a guy who listens to podcasts, and Irish guy who that chapter he talks about real crimes and stuff like that. And sometimes they talk about movies at the start. And he slated it. And he said the acting was terrible. And I actually liked the acting. And then that's where I start to question, so maybe I couldn't direct people, because I really liked it, but somebody else said they don't. So who's right?
No, you know what? It's really funny to that. We were just talking about this with a friend of ours who's a director, and he always makes the joke that actors don't want to use his work in their show reel because he makes them look like they can't act. And it's not that. It's like they're working very hard with him to create this atmosphere that's very false. And so then when people watch it, if they aren't in the mood of the movie, if they aren't in the space of the movie, which is quite a lot of the movies that he makes, this is for our podcast listeners, the frequent re-listeners, this is James Edward Newton. He's the guy who did Copernica and Black Lizard Tales. He's been on here. I don't know if you've had the chance to see any of his stuff, Mark, but if you do, I think you'd quite like it, because he builds these environments where the environment is more real than the people. And the people are bizarre and strange, and you have to kind of navigate them rather than what's happening plot wise or the environment that they're in. And it's really cool, but it's very odd acting wise. And I can see how a lot of people who would get just a small clip of it without the context would go, this person can't act. And it's not because the acting's bad. The acting's really good. It's just doing something that's not mainstream. And I wonder if there's something similar in The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's not that the acting is good or bad. It's not traditional, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch this movie not thinking about it acting.
It's different. I mean, I do like found footage anyway. Yeah. I do. And I still think The Blair Witch is amazing. I just like it. And I'm not ashamed to say that, but a lot of people seem to like it too. But another movie I've seen is a little bit different. But again, it's the relationship of people is Monster, where the lady is driving her daughter home. Have you seen that? I'm pretty sure it's come on.
I think I have.
Have you seen it, Chris?
I don't believe so.
I think it is called Monster. And there's a lady, I won't give too much away, but she's an alcoholic and she's driving her daughter across state to live with her dad. And then something happens along the way. But the relationship of the people, the mother and daughter, is way more interesting than the monster, And I think that's what the director wanted. You really care for them. You really care for these people. And it's almost like, it's a little bit like from Dusk Till Dawn. It almost one movie, then all of a sudden another, But it doesn't kill that relationship between the mother and the daughter. And I really like it. It's just another random movie. It's funny that when you go through Prime and Netflix, you find these things that aren't necessarily advertised. And you watch them and you go, well, why isn't that getting more of a pitch than some of the others? Because and I just like it. It just works. Again, it's people. It's always about people for me, or emotion, or just trying to connect with the person who's looking in. And I think if things are too, with animation, if they're too visual, the aesthetic, and not moving at the right pace, they won't engage you. I mean, especially with today's audiences who barely look at a video for more than 10 seconds before they scroll on, But unfortunately, with a movie, if you want to fall in love with characters, you have to sit down and get to know them. You have to spend that time with them before you go, I don't want them to die.
Very true.
Yeah,
Very
so
true.
it's a bit of a it's a catch-20. It's a twist. What do you do? How do you grab someone from the start? But well, you can't because they need to spend time with you to understand you. So, as in real life.
What horror movies grabbed you as a kid? What did you kind of start out watching?
Oh, I love The Thing, and my father didn't want us to watch it the first time, but we somehow did. Used to sit up all hours of night watching Hammer Horror with my big brother, and he was always more nervous than me. I'd be more intrigued about how they did it. But yeah, I watched all the Hammer Horrors. I just loved them growing up. Um, uh, have you seen 1979 Dracula? I can't remember the name of the actor. And the father, it's where they put the white horse on the grave, and the horse starts stamping on
Oh
the grave.
yeah. Who's in it? Who's the guy in that?
I can't remember.
Oh,
Are you good with it?
yeah, I am. Frank
It's
Lagella.
yeah,
Lagella. Yeah, that's
Lagella.
the
it's great.
one.
Now that scene where is it Laurence Olivier? Who's the father of the?
Yes, Laurence Olivier.
He goes down underneath. Now the only thing I'd question is vampires don't have reflections, but you see the reflection in the water first of his daughter, and she goes, "Papa, come, Papa." That scene stuck with me for years, but not in a scared way. My sister had nightmares. I was fine, but it was, I loved it. That kind of hooked me on horror. Those little things that you could watch so much, at night, all hours of night, much to your parents' demise. And you'd see something and then you'd store it and it never goes away. And I think that comes out then somehow in your work because you want to create that. I want to make someone feel how I felt, And as a child, you don't seem to forget those feelings. Well, I don't anyway. They stick with me. So, yeah, and as I said, I mentioned Jaws. I liked old sci-fi as well. I liked the original The Thing. Very Rembrandt-esque because they have lots of scenes with a lot of characters in view at the same time looking. So like some of Rembrandt's anatomy paintings, that's what the original Howard Hawks thing reminds me of because they're playing with the hand or whatever, the plant, and they're all leaning towards, and the director saying, "I want you to look here," So, and it is like a painting, it's black and white, but it's still like a painting. So, because there's something about the atmosphere where there's no other distractions. They're stranded. There's something out there, a little bit like Predator. There's only so many characters. I'm in because I can focus on these people. And I think that's why I like Monster and Deborah Logan as well, because small crew, small cast, intimate relationships, and one goal is to win. And they don't always. But back to Chris's question about horror. Yeah, I was always watching horror. Always. Always sneaking out, staying up at night to see. And because we had to, because my father, he didn't have anything against it. He probably thought we were just too young, But I thought Hammer Horror was quite calm in the 80s and 90s, really. I was 30 years old. It was obvious the blood was paint. It was Technicolor super red.
Actually, Chris has slowly been sorry, Chris, I know you want to ask a question.
No,
but I'm just
going
to very quickly interrupt. We've been getting Chris into Hammer slowly, so he's only watched a few. Do you have some that you recommend he really watch? He's seen Twins of Evil and Dracula AD 72.
I love the Frankenstein with Christopher Lee. It just works. It just worked. That scene where he gets shot. I don't want to give it away, but yeah, it's really good. But have you ever seen, Chris, the Hammer House of Horror series?
I have started it. I found it on Tubi or one of the streaming sites. I think I've watched 2 episodes.
I love it. I would advise people to watch that. And isn't the opening track great?
Yes.
The tune is okay. It's really good. And Ian McCulloch was in one of those, Lauren.
Yeah, he is. We took a picture when he was on and sent it to him. He was like, what?
Do you know what? I actually had a nice chat with Ian at the party. I got about 10, 15 minutes with him.
He's lovely, isn't he? He's delightful.
he's not that old, is he? He's very switched on, dude, isn't he? And he looks brilliant, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's just completely, yeah. I was kind of shocked when someone said how old he was. I thought, oh, he can't be that age.
Totally.
But yeah, it's Hammer House of Horror is really good. I have a favorite, but I won't tell you which one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do get the feeling of growing up in the States, obviously, Hammer was not a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but with the streaming sites now, back then having to go to a rental store to get things and what was on TV was limited to what they chose to offer. But we had the Tales from the Crypt. So I always kind of associate Tales from the Crypt was kind of like my Hammer horror that I could watch. Like it was a different, two short stories or three short stories.
Yes. And it's a shame because I didn't, I mean, I grew up in Ireland and we had, for a few years, we only had two channels, Radio Television, 1 and 2. And then we got ITV Channel 4, etc., and BBC. And that's when the Hammer Horse that we were able to watch them. But it was, yeah, I was always starved, Chris, of things. I loved Scream comic. That was, I don't think that was British comic. That got banned after 13 or so, not very many copies. And it was brilliant, because, as a child, you could go and buy a horror and then you could it was illustrated for you. And it was just, skulls and zombies and corpses rising from the grave, all the classic stuff that I liked, when I was growing up. But it was, I would have seen quite a few things that you grew up, but I mean, The Fog I really like. The original The Fog. It's lovely. Even just the start of it, the silent scenes of the town, just where you've got silence and then you hear ding, 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 and the guy's cleaning and he has a drink of juice and he puts it back, in the fridge as he's cleaning. And then I just like that. I was going to say Halloween 3 I've always liked.
Oh, amazing!
No. This is an ongoing debate on this podcast.
But you know what? I can totally understand, Chris. Where did that come from? Right. I mean? Where did it come from? But I just like it because it's nuts. And, and everybody, that song never leaves your head.
No. I 100% can get behind the fact that it is a good horror movie. The fact that when I'm watching those movies, and I didn't watch it when it first came out, but I'm expecting we had Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, and you have these characters who go, multiple movies, and waiting for Mike Myers to then turn around and give me the third movie of, these evil masks, and it is a good standalone movie, but I forget who we were talking to, but I was like, you can't call Iron Eagle Top Gun 2. Like you can't, like yes, they both have fighter jets and so sorry. I didn't mean to, that's my chance. I will die on that hill.
No, it's fine because I'm very aware of the hate love. And I think that, I suppose just from talking to you, that seems to be a trend in the movies I like. They are like or loathe, but I suppose it's like that with a lot of things, but on a large scale. I mean, and I don't know, it's nuts, it's not the best acted movie, and it's an evil Irish man. I liked the Clockwork Grandmother in the corner. It was just full of all this weird stuff that was completely irrelevant. Oh, we'll use that. That's cool. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's a Clockwork Grandmother. It's got nothing to do with the movie, but it'll get you for a second. So,
are there any Irish horror movies that maybe I've gotten 2 movies that I haven't seen, The Ugly Stepsister and the Deborah Logan. But what is something that's Irish that I need to check out?
You know what? Again, there are, and I can't remember their names. No. Because I said to Laura and Tony when I was staying with them, I never remember names, which is why I had to write down The Ugly Steps. I had to read it to make sure I knew it was still there. There's a few I've watched lately, and I don't want to give away, but one of them is about a pit. There's like an underground pit. Okay, I think that just came out last year, I can't remember what platform I watched it on. It's either on Netflix or Prime, and it's available for free. I thought that was quite good. But yeah, sorry, Chris, names.
No, that's okay.
I will
I'm
never
all.
forget your face.
I'm always a big fan of with the horror genre in general. Is I like you were saying, like there's kind of like the diamond in the rough. Like you'll watch something that maybe didn't get a lot of fanfare, and then you're like, well, why didn't that get? I saw these three things and they were kind of garbage, but then you watch this and you're like blown away with like, never heard of this. This is 3 years old. I came across it on Hulu or Netflix, and you're like, this is great. So I'm always a fan of when someone's like, watch this, or this was really good. Like I write it down and I have like this ongoing list where I just delete from the top and then keep going.
Yeah, good. I try to do the same. It frustrates me when I suddenly remember the name of a movie as well, and I go to look at it and it's just ran out. That happens sometimes.
That'll happen. Yep.
That happens quite a lot, and I think it's because I've seen it when I've been scrolling, earmarked it, and then it's gone. it's gone by the time you get round to it. But yeah, I watch horror continuously. I mean, I really do. Continuous. And it's mostly Prime, because Prime, there's a lot of independence there. And there's a lot of stuff, just like you said, that's surprisingly good, or not necessarily very good, but has got a really good piece in it. And you kind of think, well, there's some amazing shorts online as well. Have you seen The Cat with the Hands?
No,
I have not.
I did send a link to Tony. Tony's seen it.
Okay, I'll ask him.
It's so The Cat with the Hands. It's just watch it. That's a mixture of animation and people and film, and that's just nice. There's just something nice in here. It's off-putting. There's no gore, but it's just, you kind of go, what the hell was that? Do you know what I mean? I like it.
I see the still frame of it right now, and it looks creepy. So I will definitely. It will. That'll be watched today.
Yeah, because if you search, which I'm sure you do, YouTube short horror, there's so much out there now.
Oh yeah.
There's a brilliant short movie, and again, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's Don't Look or something, where the family are at the table, and without giving too much away, they say, she's back. He goes, yeah, don't look, you can't look, and there's this entity or whatever, and well, they look. But it's short, but you kind of interact with these people really quickly. You understand the dad, the mum, the children, you understand their fear. All of a sudden, I don't want them to get hurt. And that's an example of where it's done very quickly, very little talking in it, and that just works.
Cool.
Really, I like stuff like that.
That's awesome. I'm curious to know what other than witches, because you've talked about that, but what you're working on now that other people will be able to like keep an ear or an eye out for.
I'm still doing a lot of corporate work, and the thing I do a lot of work for two quite large companies. Well, yeah, global, but they are. I can't share any of that. That's the problem, because it's in-house. So they might share it globally within their network, but as for social media, they have their own social medias as well. A lot of these companies do now. They have their own intranets, and you can post. So if you go to like a manager's meeting, or you go to a safety day, they will share those pictures and happy emojis like what we do in normal social media, but it stays within the confines of the companies. So I do a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, I sometimes I think if people look at my Facebook, they think he's doing nothing. I'm always doing something. But I can't share about 60% of it. No. So Tony's animation is a focus for me now at the moment, Lauren. I want to get that done, and because I created the music video, I've just learned so much. I decided, I don't know if Chris knows, but I wanted to make a short in the new year, and I've had this idea, but I needed planes, like World War II planes. So I went on eBay one night and searched, and they all cost too much money, And I thought, well, I could build one. I thought, lender's free, isn't it? So I went in and got downloaded Blender, and it is amazing. And I've taught myself Blender, and that's what I've used for the music video, and that's what I'm using for Tony. So, I don't know if I can plug software. Can I here?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, like for Tony's and for this, I use Blender, Premiere Pro, Animate, After Effects, Photoshop, Illustrator, and even Paint sometimes, because Paint is a really good file for auto compression. So you can change a picture by 20%, and it still might reduce the file size by 80%. And whereas Photoshop sometimes adds extra file size on it. So you're constantly using all these softwares at the same time. So Fresco I use as well. So I draw on the iPad Fresco, say the figures, and then they go on they're on the cloud, and then they go into Photoshop, make them the right frame, put mottled paper around them. Then you have to UV trace them so that you get the paper at the back, and then they're in Blender. Then you animate them in Blender and you render them. Then you put them on the timeline in Premiere Pro. So it's a constant movement of things. It's your head really, like my son gets really annoyed at me. He says, "Dad, you're not listening." I go, "I told you, I'm in the zone. I can't focus." Honestly, Chris, you're going down and you're looking at something. You're like, that's food, and you're just thinking, was it 135 or 145 on the render? So, and I've left my computer on at night as well. Sometimes it takes a long time to render, and the poor thing is just running all night to render 400 frames, say 24 frames. There's not that many coverage in seconds, but it needs that time to do it.
Wow.
Because it's remembering everything that you've got in your scene, every tack, every blue tack, every poster, every image, every texture you've applied. It has to render them simultaneously to complete the image. The lighting, if you use atmosphere, you can literally create a block of low opacity atmosphere and put a gradient on it. And when the light goes through it, you can fill. I've even created dust, floating dust, and it has to remember all those things. Well, there's a dust particle here, and now it's moving there, and then there's one here. So the computer's going, I don't know. What are you doing? So, but it keeps your brain active.
Yeah.
No, totally.
And I want to work with you again, Lauren, as well. I really enjoyed working with Robot Armadillo.
Thank you. I will. As similar with you, I've just been working on too many other things to write a new thing, but I will write a new thing.
Because Robot Armadillo's just, I think it's special. There's something special about it.
I love it.
It's just so different, and it ticks all the boxes. With the narration, the visuals, obviously Craig is his music.
His sound
is amazing. It just, it just works.
It's going to be at the Pompeii Wood Festival, actually, at the end of August 31st. It's going to be showing in the Pompeii Wood Festival in Plymouth. So it's still doing the rounds.
Good.
But yeah, amazing. So we're coming towards the end, but I just wanted to kind of, I have at least one more final question. I don't know if Chris does as well, but I wanted to mention, because I obviously follow you on Facebook and Instagram, and you do these great like children's book drawings of Halloween things every now and then, these like ghosts. Again, do you do those just for fun? Are you ever going to write a Halloween children's book?
I already have a story. In fact, I've got a few, but one I'll give you a title. It's called The Lonely Ghost. It starts off, I think there might be an image. I mean, I have to update my website because it's 2 years old, and I've done so much since then. So obviously I'll come knocking on your door asking for permission to use.
All yours. Go for it.
But yeah, I do. I draw for fun, but I grew up drawing cartoons. That was my love. I drew and drew and drew, and I used to, the very first time I seen an A3 sketch pad. I was 8 years old, went into the shop in Enniskillen called L Halls, and I got my first set of 24 color felt tips, and I couldn't believe how big this art pad was. And it was only A3, the absolute sketch pad, a little drawing of a barn in front of it. And my mother treated me, and I got a TV comic, and the TV comic was a British comic where they had Laurel and Hardy, Tom and Jerry. They were very badly drawn, but And I took it home and I used to draw A3 pictures of the characters. And when my teacher found out, I took it into school, and every day she'd turn a page and it was on show next to the blackboard and that. So I was, from a young age, I liked, some people think it's attention. It really isn't. It's about attention for what you're trying to do or say. I think that's the best way to put it. You know, if people compliment you, great, but it's not going to stop you from doing what you want to do at the end of the day. So yes, Lauren, I love drawing cartoons. It was when I went to grammar school when I was 11, we had to start drawing figuratively, realistically. And to be honest, 10 months later, I was GCSE level, you know, which is like 15, 16 years old, because it's just another medium. So I think kind of, you know, to what you were talking about earlier about different styles, I think when you're able to work photoreal, even though I don't like that expression because the world is real before photos and you just represent it on canvas. You know, it should be painting real, you know, but and fluent cartoon, and I can do fluent cartoon because a lot of people will do that if they're not used, but I can flow. You know, when you've got that dexterity and you're able to do it, it gives you endless possibilities of different styles and that you can do, because you're able to draw classic animation, but you're also able to do something that's quite real. With the introduction of, you know, film and different effects, there is no limit, absolutely no limit to what can be done. You know, just have to be loyal to the client.
That's amazing. So wait, does that mean the Lonely Ghost is going to come out just to bring it full circle? Is that going to be?
It might do. I shared another idea, which I won't say on this podcast. I don't know if you can remember at Christmas, and that's one very deep to my heart. So that might be something I do first, and that would be a book.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be a book, and I like the style for that. It's kind of like 1950s, isn't it? You know, so I just like that. But it's I have another idea about people sitting around a campfire, and it's in verse, and I really like lots. I'm getting old.
Yeah, you're going to run out of time. Is what's happening. Is you have too many projects and too many things you're trying to go for, and there's only so many hours in a day, even if your computer is running while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, Chris, I used to take a notebook with me to bed in the dark. I got used to writing ideas in the dark, because you'd wake up and you'd have an idea and you knew there's 9 times out of 10 chance you'd forget in the morning. Of course, we use phone stars, so I have you know, the reminders of notes in your phone. It's that long with ideas, you know, because that's what I do now.
That's great.
You got a backlight to put something in, you know, really quickly. You know, it's usually, you know, not typed in correctly because you're like half asleep, but you can understand what it's saying. But yeah, I want to do more.
I think that's a perfect note to end on, because it doesn't end. Art doesn't end. So I'm gonna use that as a good last words. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on. Yes. It's flown by and been so fun.
Thank you. Yeah. I know I talked too much, Chris.
No, loved it. It was a great conversation. We'll have to have you back when we got other stuff in your promote, or just come back on and chat, because I'll have to tell you about the cat with hands. You know, I would need to watch that.
Yeah, so. And Hammer House of Horror as well. Watch that. I mean, some of them are okay, but there's one in particular I really like.
Okay, we'll have you back on, and we'll talk Hammer House of Horror.
Very nice to meet you, Chris.
Yes, you as well.
Thank you, everyone. And of course, thanks to our listeners. This has been the London Horror Movie Club. If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.